Hey guys, this is Zach with Float North Georgia. Out here on the Toccoa River this morning. Wanted to talk to you guys about fly fishing versus spin fishing. I get a ton of questions on, is fly fishing hard? What's the differences between spin fishing and fly fishing? Is there a learning curve? Is one of them better? So today I'm gonna fish, got a spin rod and a fly rod. Gonna go over kind of the main differences and fish a little bit and see if one is better than the other. To start with spin fishing, your line on your spin rod is not weighted. So when you make your cast, you're using that leverage of your arm and the rod, and the weight of your lure is actually what's carrying your line out there. So with that being said, casting with a spin rod can be a little bit easier. You're just using your arm to cast that, and your lure, again, is carrying your line out there. With fly fishing, your line is actually weighted, and it matches the weight of the rod that you have. And because the flies that you're fishing are typically fairly light in most scenarios, your line itself, the weighted line, is what is carrying those flies out there. The biggest difference from a casting standpoint between spin fishing and fly fishing is a lot of your power from when you're fly fishing comes from your back cast. So when you're casting, you're using more of the leverage of the fly rod. Fly rods are a good bit longer than most of your conventional tackle. So with fly fishing, you really use the leverage and the length of the rod to help carry your line and your flies out there to where you want them to be. Just from a general standpoint, with spin fishing, for the most part, you're going to be imitating bait fish. So kind of pros of fishing with a spin rod is a little bit easier to cast it further. With fly fishing, you may have to make a few false casts to get your flies out as far as you would want them in some scenarios. And with a spin rod, with one cast, you can get it pretty far out there. Another pro kind of benefit of using a spin rod is if you've got a lot of overhanging trees or a little kind of nook you're trying to get your lure into, that spin rod is going to be a little bit easier. You can flick it, into those smaller spaces or get it under a tree, where with fly fishing, you're a little bit more limited as far as getting your flies, under a tree or in a really tight space. A few pros of fly fishing, to me, it's such an art. I think a lot of people see movies like A River Runs Through It, and fly fishing looks really intimidating. It's really not that difficult. I've had kids on the boat, people have never fly fished, and a lot of people pick it up really quickly. Kind of the pros of fly fishing, though, is a lot of times, specifically if you're fishing for trout, those trout are eating bugs for a lot of their diet, and it's a lot easier to imitate and naturally present bug imitations with a fly rod. You have a much more delicate presentation with a fly rod, so when that line lands out there and your leader and then your flies, you get a much more gentle landing on the water itself, so less chance of spooking fish that way. And fly fishing just in general is so active. You're watching your flies, you're mending your line, just kind of keeps you in that moment while you're fishing, where spin fishing is, I would say a little bit more approachable when you're, younger or a beginner. But, after a while, you're kind of doing the same thing. You cast out, you bring it back, cast out, bring it back, where with fly fishing, it's a little more involved and kind of keeps things a little more interesting. So I'm gonna put the GoPro on and we're gonna fish, start off with a spin rod, and then kind of just see which one works best and kind of talk through the details of it as we're fishing. Alrighty, so we're starting off with a spin rod. I've got a little rooster tail on here, and make a few casts through this hole and see what happens. Oh, there was a fish chasing it, another fish chasing it, 3 fish chasing it. I don't know if you guys could see that, but first cast we've had 3 or 4 fish kind of following that rooster tail. Try that again and see what happens. Another one tried to eat it and missed it. And missed that one. I'd say that's a good sign. We've had about 3 or 4 attempts so far. Try that again. One followed it, but no eat. Try a little further over there. Nothing that time. Try a little further up. Had one follow at that time, but no eat. Try the bottom side of this pool. Oh, one swiped at it. One's following it. They're not committing to this. They're kind of swiping at it, but not committing to fully eating it. Let's try that again. Oh, another one followed it. Another one's following it to the boat. So if you can kind of see when I'm casting, you know, I'm using a lot of wrist and arm to throw the lure itself, to cast the lure, and then my line is basically getting pulled out from the weight of this lure. So we had a few follows, no commits, so let's try the fly rod and see if we have any different luck. For the fly rod, I'm just doing a standard dry dropper setup. I've got a chubby Chernobyl and 2 little nips below that. So again, kind of the biggest difference here is with spin fishing, my actual lure is what's carrying my flies out. And with here, my weighted line is carrying my flies out here. So we kind of had that bait fish imitation with a spin rod, and now we're kind of imitating some bugs floating through that same hole. Another kind of difference with fly fishing and spin fishing is with fly fishing, you have to manage your line on the water with what's called a mend, M-E-N-D. When your line's floating down the water, there's going to be times where the current may try to pull your line ahead of your flies, or you know, slow your flies down. So you have to kind of manage your line on the water as your flies are floating down to make sure you get a natural drift. I'm gonna slide the boat down just a hair, and I'm gonna start with the fly rod in this next section, and then I'll switch to that spin rod. Okay, next hole. Let's see if fish want to eat. There's a fish. Feels like a decent one. All right, so first fish on the fly. Get the net out. Try not to spook the rest of them. The rainbow. Thank you, buddy. All right, we'll run this fly rod through this hole a couple more times, and then we'll see how the spin rod does. these fish were gonna eat something, my goodness. We just had to find them, I guess. Come here, little buddy. So that was 2 casts through this hole with the fly rod and 2 eats. Let's do one more cast through this hole and see what happens. Get all my line tangled up. So again, just kind of with fly fishing, specifically right now for trout, you know, fishing these bug imitations. So they're just drifting down the river, and you know, during the day, those trout are just sitting there underwater, facing upstream. Almost missed that one. So that's 3 casts and 3 fish in this hole. Grab the net for this one. Thanks, buddy. All right, let's give the spin rod a shot. That was 3 casts, 3 fish. Let's see how the spin rod does. With fly fishing, it's just so much fun. You know, you're managing your line, you're making sure you're getting a good drift. It's just keeps you kind of connected in the moment. So let's see how the spin rod does. Nothing there. Let's go a little higher. Even a follow, huh? Little neighborhood dogs giving a little good morning. If you can tell with the spin rod when I cast, you know, you're covering a lot more water and get your lure out there a lot further and cover a lot more water a lot faster. So in this specific hole, the fly rod, I cast 3 times through the hole and caught 3 fish. And so far with this rooster tail set up on the spin rod, I haven't even had a follow. So let's see. I'd really like to catch one on the spin rod. It's been a long time. All right, just for fun, since we've thrown this through there probably 10, 15 times, let's try the fly rod again just to see if that is what they are liking right now. Because those first few casts, it was bam, 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 bam. Just kidding. Guys are feisty, I like it. Thank you, buddy. Well, the fly rod right now seems to be the ticket this morning. Just the fly rod in these slower holes like this. You know, you're not disturbing the water near as much when your flies land. And if those fish are kind of keyed in on bugs a little bit, which it seems like they are right now. I mean, I've done half the amount of casts through this hole with this fly rod, caught 4 fish, and with the spin rod I made probably 10, 15 casts, and didn't even have a follow. To me though, at the end of the day, fishing is fishing. Whatever you enjoy and whatever gets you out on the water and catching fish, to me is a win. You know, there's a place for a spin rod, there's a place for fly fishing. You know, it all depends on what your preference is. If you kind of enjoy the ease of a spin rod, being able to cast it further and cover more water, you know, quickly, you know, spin rod is a great tool for that. You know, if you're looking to kind of learn more and kind of perfect casting and presentation with a fly rod, and they're just, to me with fly fishing, it's just endless. There's so much to learn. I don't know how anyone could know every single thing there is to know about fly fishing, and you know that you can. It's never ending, which is what I love about it. You know, so I think there's a place for both, and again, to me, at the end of the day, fishing is fishing. Whatever gets you out on the water having a good time is a-okay with me. Thanks guys for watching. Again, just kind of wanted to give you guys a little kind of snippet of spin fishing versus fly fishing. You know, with spin fishing, you're able to cast further out there, and again, your line is not weighted on that rod. Your lure is what's carrying out your line, where with fly fishing, your line itself is weighted. So you're casting the actual line, which is carrying your flies, which are lighter, out, you know, to the water. Kind of pros again of spin fishing is you're able to cover a lot more water quickly. You know, a lot easier to cast out. You know, one cast and get it pretty far out there. Kind of downfall is sometimes when your lure hits the water, it can spook the fish. You know, and it's harder to present a bug type fly or bait lure when you're spin fishing. Fly fishing, you know, it can be a little bit more of a challenge getting your flies further away. But again, when your flies land, you get a nice, delicate presentation on the water. And then again, imitating those bugs that most of those fish are actually eating can be a little bit easier with a fly rod. We have a blog post written up, fly fishing versus spin fishing. There's a link in the description. You can check that out. It goes into a little more depth on some of the main differences and kind of covers a little bit of what we talked about today. Thanks again for watching, and you can head to floatnorthgeorgia.com to learn more about what we do here. And if you're interested in a guided trip or learning more about the Toccoa, feel free to give us a call. Thanks, guys.